fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
Stuck in the weeds. Story of my life. Down a quarter mile or so into Egg Island Wildlife Management Area this past Friday. That's at the end of Jersey Avenue in Fortescue. It's where we did last week's video forecast, talking about the satellite tag coming from the fish Independence. Well, that's about the scene of where it is, and you could tell it's a hard one to find with all that grass and sod and sedges, but it's still out there. I'm Jim Hutchinson with a New Jersey, Delaware Bay edition of the Fisherman magazine. Independence, that was the third and final striped bass that we affixed with a MiniPSAT device to track the movements of striped bass. The first two fish, Cora and Rona, they came up earlier this year. We've already written that one up in the November edition, but Independence, which was tagged off of Montauk, July 3rd, popped up. That tag came off the fish last week, 4 months to the day, just the way it was scheduled. And it popped up off of Fortescue. Now, since then, we've been trying to track the information as much as possible. Keep in mind that Argos satellite goes around the Earth, right? And the tag that came undone from the fish, it only has battery power up to about 10 days, maybe more, maybe less. But when that tag is out of the water and that antenna is showing in the sky, it'll feed the data to the satellite overhead. Now, we knew it was a few hundred yards off the beach in Fortescue last week. There is a slight degree of error with these things, as you can imagine, roughly about 750 feet or so. So yeah, that's pretty much still like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but we do have it kind of narrowed down in that vicinity. We're relatively sure it is ashore. We haven't had any astronomical high tides. The wind has been light offshore and from the south, so hopefully that tag is still along the creek or along the marshes. A group of bounty hunters, some metal detector enthusiasts, hunters and fishermen, they've been scouring the area, but still, nobody has claimed the $500 bounty for that tag. Now, on Monday, I'll tell you this, the two most reliable pings are represented on the screen right now by two thumbtacks. One is off the point there. Like I said, it's just below Fortescue on that Egg Island management area. The second one is there stuck in a feeder creek that is there as well. Now, I pinpointed the halfway point in between. That position onshore is 39 degrees, 13.083 by 75 degrees, 9.880 degrees. That's a position dead in the middle. So if you have that Navionics app on your cell phone, that's what I did last week, still couldn't narrow it down, but we are still looking for that tag. It's very important that we get it back. We can still get the information as it feeds the Argos satellite. But again, a $500 bounty for that tag. I would ask you to keep checking back in with the Fisherman Magazine's Facebook page, and as soon as we get updates, we will put that information there. And to get more information on that Northeast striped bass study, you can pick up the November edition of the Fisherman Magazine, which is out in newsstands now. Read all the details on what we're working on, because this is incredible work, and the findings for what these striped bass do during that time period while they're affixed with that tag is just staggering. Now, they're expensive tags, $5,000 a piece. I personally can't afford one of those, but I sure would like to get a GPS tracking device on a couple of buddies of mine. One of them is Chris Madison. He's been letting me know of some fish he's catching this week down in Atlantic County. Now, Wednesday morning, this Wednesday morning, I was up in northern Ocean County, didn't get a touch once again. He texted me that he got touches because he's been getting touches all week. Wednesday morning, he had a chunky speckled trout, which was a great sign for folks in Atlantic and Cape May County hoping for that run, but also had some good striped bass. Now, he's been having these stripers in Atlantic County all week. He's saying, he's talking about 20 pounders. He lost one big fish on one of his casts, but he's been throwing Uzuri, the Uzuri hydro minnows and also the SP minnows. He's had a half dozen fish on Tuesday. So again, I want a GPS tracker on him. That's the best. With that 46-inch striper, if you think about it, that big striper Independence coming into Delaware Bay, that's a good sign that there's some big fish back there, right? Maybe the Cape May rips, or maybe some of those areas along the Delaware where folks used to chunk fish. And then if Chris is reporting some fish along the Atlantic County beaches, maybe that's just what they're doing. Everybody's putting so much attention up in North Jersey, Monmouth County, northern Ocean County, because that's where the migration's coming from. But we've had migratory stripers along the coast for weeks, months now, right? So maybe they're coming in and out across the line. Who knows? But as we talk about all the time, you can't just wait for the report. Sometimes you have to make them. But again, another one from Atlantic County, Roman Avila Sanchez. He's been finding action in Atlantic City on the rocks. He let me know he's been throwing needlefish with a teaser. Also the Hopkins with a yellow tail and a teaser. Don't forget the teasers. There have been plenty of bunker schools and fish on bunker. We talked about this last week, though. Sometimes the fish are keyed in on smaller baits, thinner baits. They're keyed in on the sand eels. Maybe it's rainfish. But always be ready to add a dropper. You know, you're throwing those big plugs, you're throwing those big shads, those tsunami shads. But every once in a while, you're not getting a bite. You're seeing the bait, but it's also worth tying that dropper, adding a dropper to the leader that you have, and then keep an assortment of different flies in the bag. If you go to any of the tackle shops along the coast, a lot of the local fly tyers, they'll make beautiful little flies. They usually keep them right at the counter. So make sure you pick up a teaser when you're at the counter, picking up some leader material, getting you spooled, or picking up some of your favorite plugs. But again, make sure you have an assortment of teasers so you can add it to that dropper. The Avas, the thin profile jigs, they are a great match for sand eels, but they're also great, along with the Hopkins, for deploying the teaser. I had the last couple of fish, nothing to write home about, small stripers in the past week. The ones that I've caught, they've all been on the teaser. And that Ava, for example, has just been what I've been using to deploy the teaser because they're on those thin baits. Just keep that in mind. It's also good for breaking the wind. No pun intended. South wind. We've had a lot of south wind this week, which is not my favorite. It's not real good for surf casting. It always seems the fish turn off. But then you're getting those wind knots, right? That's one of the reasons why I go with a heavier braid. Some people say it's overkill, but one of my reels is spooled with 40-pound braid just because it's easier to break free of those wind knots. If you're using 20 and 30-pound, you get all those wind knots from varying lures that you're using and dealing with the wind. It's so difficult to get the knots out of those smaller braids. But if you have the opportunity, I used that this past week when I had a reel malfunction. If you can keep a couple of reels locked up in your truck or in your car when you go up to the beach, so you've got 20, you've got 30, and you've got another reel spooled up with 40-pound perhaps, it does make it easier to manage the knots when you're plugging. Bait, of course, is always an option. If you're not into the plug-in, you want to go with bait, definitely. That works, especially the bunker chunks. It's exactly what we heard at the south end of LBI this week when the folks at Jingles Bait and Tackle said Pat Gillen had stripers up to 46 inches chunking bunker on the south end of LBI. It's also another good sign for folks south of Barnegat Inlet. So many seasons, it seems those fish hit Barnegat Inlet and head southeast. Maybe this is the time we start trying. Maybe the fish are coming in close. Who knows? Maybe we missed the bite in Ocean and Monmouth County. I don't think so. I think we've got plenty of opportunities coming up in the next week, next 2 weeks, 3, right up until Thanksgiving especially. But this past Saturday, working in Manaloking by myself, had an opportunity where bass pushed bunker into the wash, right across the breakers. I had 5 or 6 casts where I had that opportunity to hook up. Just couldn't do it. Hopefully we'll hear more in the coming weeks of these bunker moving in close. And I have spoken to folks who say there's still plenty of peanut bunker staging in the inlets and the rivers just back behind the ocean. So they're not even in the system yet for the most part. So maybe a good dose of northwest wind, a little chillier conditions. It's certainly not fall out there right now. It still feels like summer. But if we can chill things off a little bit and those peanuts come out, maybe we'll get a pretty decent melee with some of those stripers around and those peanuts pinned up against the beaches. Now, according to the NOAA weather forecast for the middle of this week, heading into the weekend, we're looking at some northeast winds Thursday and Friday, though northwest winds overnight Friday into Saturday. And that could be enough to put bait and bass on the beaches here along the Jersey Shore. Let's hope. Boaters, of course, are getting it done for the most part from Lavalette to Sandy Hook and throughout the Raritan. Young Stone Keating, he was out off of Monmouth Beach this week. Look at that beast of a fish. Check that one in, or release that fish. It looks bigger than Stone there. But we got that report from Phil over at the tackle box. While Mike Savchuk, he caught and released another monster fish this week aboard the Big Mohawk at a Shark River. Lots of overs. It's good to see all these fish being released. I know a lot of folks went into this season think this was going to be frustrating, but that's good for the stock, I would hope. A lot of big fish being released. If you're wondering about those bluefish, another fisheries management poster child, bluefish, a big one off of Monmouth Beach for Mark Mercer. He was out there, said this was one of his personal best, which is good to see, because that would be a nice fight in the surf. Those big bruiser bluefish show up to join the peanut bunker party. I know the LBI Surf Fishing Classic, 66 years, always stripers, always bluefish. Well, I don't even think there's been a bluefish weighed in yet. So if those bluefish turn on, you could cash in on LBI as that tournament continues. Those boat guys, it's been about the jigs in the situations where the fish are on sand eels. So don't go out just thinking you're going to be live lining or just throwing plugs. Make sure you have those jigs, those sand eel imitations, and a variety of sizes of those avas as well, because they could be feeding on top, they could be down deep. But also you've got the baits, the live bunker around the pods of bait. Or the eels are always working, of course, but around those bait pods, you've got the swim shads, you've got the topwater poppers, the pencils, the Polaris, or even just the metal lip swimming plugs. The other thing, of course, is the troll. Guys are still trolling for fish. The mojos seem to be catching more in those slot keeper varieties, but folks are still gunning for some of those big stripers on the spoons that are being released. Getting some good reports from the folks dragging Maja spoons, especially in Monmouth County. Now, it's a bit of a trick question that I hear sometimes. What should be my speed? What should my speedometer read if I'm trolling those Maja spoons at the right speed? Well, it's actually a trick question. So to answer that, I went to Tony Arcabasio, aka Tony Maja, to find out more on gauging spoon speed on your speedometer.
Never look at your speedometer. Always look at the tip of your rod. The tip of your rod should dictate how fast it should be going. If you should always have a steady pulsation. If you go very slow, that means the pulsation is very slow. Just notch it up a little bit. Fluttering, going too fast, slow it down a little bit. And don't forget, tides make a difference. You know, if you're going against the tide, with the tide, always adjust. Okay? People ask me, Tony, what is the best direction to go? The best direction is going east to west, not north to south. And if you live down the Jersey Shore, if you go east to west, you're going to get hurt. They're going to throw everything at you. So always try to, if nobody's around, then do it, because you never have to change your speed if you're going east to west or west to east. But north to south is usually the given.
Keep in mind the thing about those bunker spoons, in the last couple of seasons, the last couple of falls, they've been resulting in quite a few Thresher catches as well. In fact, Al Ritono of the Staten Island Fishing Club was out with Captain Joe Barshita, Paul Barshita, and Neil Fasson. They hit this 185-pounder at the Shrewsbury Rocks. Keep that in mind. Even if you're not an offshore guy, you don't get an HMS permit because you don't go chasing tuna, or you're not out there chasing those giant ghosts that are swimming along the coast right now. You might want to drop the $26, $30 for the HMS permit just in case you're dragging a spoon and end up with one of these Threshers. My father was out this week with a buddy. They ended up with a good Thresher. They didn't have a gaff, considered tail wrapping it, but then they thought, well, I don't even know if we have the HMS permit updated. Make sure you do that, because if you get that Thresher shark, if you have a gaff, if you can tail drag it, that little expense with an HMS permit, if you do catch a Thresher on a spoon, will come in quite handy. We've got an update on Reds, Blackfish, and our coastal kayak clash in just about 60 seconds. But first, let's check in with George, our Pocono Outdoors guy.
Well, hey, thanks, Jim. You know, we don't get too many 70-degree days in November, but we are certainly going to enjoy it. I came down here to check out the water temperature. It's up to 64 degrees, so it's actually come up a little bit, and I'm sure that has the fish totally confused. But I'll tell you what, guys are still getting fish. I had some folks check in. We had Steve Botek check in with me. He says, George, I'm still getting smallmouth. Now, he was actually right here at Beltsville, and he was getting them in deep water. He said he had to go 30 feet deep to pick them up, but he was fishing a Ned rig, and he got himself in quite a few nice smallmouth. So that's one technique. Work those Ned rigs. You know, they're going to work all winter long. That's a great cold water bait. Also, going out towards the Susquehanna, Nick Canestra checked in, and he was down the Conowingo pool in the Susquehanna working jerk baits and getting some really great little smallmouth there. That's been a tactic that's been working for the trout as well as some of the bass over the past few weeks. So break out those jerk baits, guys. They're really producing. Now also Jen Wong was working some rainbow trout, but this week on the fly. He switched things up a little. He was using jerk baits, but the fly's been producing for him too. So it's a great little setup if you can work those flies for fish as well.
I think we lost George there. He was probably burning spots at Beltsville again, and somebody pulled the plug. Well, sorry, but nobody's pulling the plug on our Jersey Shore run, not just yet. Head boats are on the hunt for sea bass. Most of that action has been out 20 miles or so. And we're a week away from an increase in Blackfish bag limit here in New Jersey. It goes up to 5 fish as of Monday the 16th. That's a good sign. And there's still plenty of great action even closer inshore. Actually, Rodrigo Felipe let me know of a jumbo he caught on Sunday. It was well over 10 pounds, he guessed. Jigfish caught on an Avid and a 4,000 Stratic. And again, we talked about it before, the speckled trout. The first few speckled trout reports are coming in, the one from Atlanta County, but hopefully we'll get a few more in Cape May County. Last November was hot action. Maybe it's just a little slow to get started. Maybe the lips are tightened on this speckled trout action, but this is typically the time of year where things get hot. And of course, with those speckled trout, especially the farther into South Jersey you go, especially into Cape May County, you're going to get a mix of redfish as well. In fact, 12-year-old Brody Selfridge was aboard Veda Rose Sport Fishing last week, caught this 24-incher on a magic tail bucktail tog jig. It was a 1.5 ouncer white glow with green crab. That was taken at one of the local reef sites down in Cape May. It would be nice to see a few more of these reds in the mix with some of those blackfish. And again, as people start getting out because of the 5-fish blackfish limit starting on Monday, maybe we'll get even more reports on some astounding catches on those inshore reefs, because it still has been fairly warm. So maybe we'll still see a few of those warmer weather species in the mix. Whatever trip you're looking to make throughout New Jersey along Delaware Bay, check our weekly report at thefisherman.com. We updated our website a couple of months ago. Makes it a lot easier to read the fishing reports. They come out every Monday. But one of the cool features you'll see in the fishing reports is a book your trip feature. All the captains that are advertising with the Fisherman magazine, if you're looking at the report and saying, I got to get on that boat right now for black sea bass, you can hit the book your trip feature. It allows you to send your charter information over to the captains. They'll get back in touch with you. Those reports are updated every Monday, so you're dialed in on the action here at the Jersey Shore and Delaware Bay. And of course, you can go in there and track the fish for Metro New York, Long Island, and New England as well. A reminder that our Coastal Kayak Clash continues through the month of November. Bob Wagner is still right there in the mix of things. Hopefully we're going to bring it home for New Jersey. I'll leave you though with the latest rundown on tournament action with our New England editor, Toby Lipinski. Get out there and get on them.
We have just about 18 days remaining in the Fisherman magazine's inaugural Coastal Kayak Clash fishing tournament. Now, this tournament began way back on May 1st, and it concludes at midnight on November 30th. Now, there hasn't been a whole lot of movement on the leaderboard over the last couple of weeks. There are still plenty of ways for you to win some really cool prizes from our sponsors, including guys over to Old Town Canoes and Kayaks, Yak Lights, Malone Auto Racks, Humminbird, Penn Reels, Fenwick Rods, Yak Attack, and more. There's a ton of prizes here. For instance, the November Fish of the Month prize is a $100 gift certificate to yakattack.com. And now that's going to be awarded to the participant who enters the longest blackfish in the month of November. This means that the entry does not need to break into the top 3, so long as just the longest blackfish entered this month by a participant. Of course, if it does eclipse any of the top 3, it will take over that spot. And speaking of the top 3 right now on the blackfish, it is currently dominated by New England anglers. I know there's some good fish in the other regions. I gotta say congrats to those New England guys, but right now we've got Chris Neves sitting in 3rd place in Blackfish Division with a 21.5-inch fish. Then holding on 2nd place, Justin Oser has a 23.25-inch blackfish, and topping it off so far right now for blackfish is New Englander Scott Schneider with a 24.25-inch tog. But you know, it's not just a blackfish tournament. There's plenty of other species. We've actually got 7 categories, including weakfish, porgies, fluke, black sea bass, sea robin, bluefish, and the hardtail combo, which included false albacore and bonita. All of which angling across all the region, all these species, is going to get you on your way to win the grand prize, which is a brand new Old Town Sportsman Series Autopilot 136 outfitted with a light kit from the guys at Yak Lights. Now, like I noted earlier, we got a great lineup of other prizes as well, so be sure to head on over to thefisherman.com right now, check out all the details, and head out on there. You got a couple more weeks. There's still plenty of time to hit the leaderboard.
Steigercraft boats, built by people who fish our waters. Serious anglers choose Steigercraft for their 40 years of boat building experience right here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Visit steigercraft.com for a dealer near you.